Good day, listeners. Now imagine this. Christina shed 52 pounds in just 4 months using a compounded version of terzepatide. She felt incredible. More energy, blood pressure stabilized, and a newfound confidence that she hadn't felt in years. And then one day, everything came crashing down. The pharmacy called to say her prescription was canceled, just like that. Why? Well, it wasn't because of Christina, or her doctor, or even medical science. No. It happened because the FDA cracked down, because Big Pharma pushed back, because no one really told her that the rules of this game, the ones governing her health, were quietly being rewritten behind closed doors. Tirzepatide, Semaglutide, you've seen these names plastered across headlines. Miracle drugs, billion-dollar breakthroughs, the future of weight loss, right? But here's the truth. These are the shiny covers of a much darker book, a pharmaceutical tug of war, where patients are caught right in the middle as collateral damage. So today, I want to strip away that glittering facade. We're going to dig into the metabolic science that drug companies do not want to advertise. We're diving into the facts of the Surmount 5 trial. And then I'll take you through the barriers to access these medications, from compounding bans to corporate control, and what it means for people like Christina. Because folks, this isn't just about weight loss. No, this is about equity, privacy, about the very question of who gets to feel better and who frankly gets left behind. And as you know by now, I'm Dr. Chelsea McGee, and this is The Real 411. Because if there's one thing I'll say over and over, it's this: the story is never just a headline. Now let's get to the nuts and bolts. Tirzepatide and Semaglutide, these aren't just buzzwords or magic pills. No. These are pieces of intricate science at work, rooted in how our bodies regulate hunger, energy, and fat oxidation. And understanding just how they work is key to breaking through the murky headlines. So let's start with semaglutide, marketed as Wegovy. It's a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist. What does that mean in plain language? Well, it mimics a hormone we naturally produce after eating, glucagon-like peptide 1, which regulates blood sugar and suppresses appetite. It's like a signal telling your brain, hey, you're full, you're good. It takes this concept and amplifies it. Tirzepatide is a dual agonist, meaning it doesn't stop at glucagon-like peptide 1 receptors. No, it also targets GIP receptors, another hormone tied to fat breakdown and insulin sensitivity. Think of it like sending 2 emails to your metabolic systems instead of just one. More pathways activated, which brings potentially greater weight loss. And here's where things get extra fascinating. Studies from the European Congress on Obesity 2025 and Malaga gave us a glimpse into these drugs' metabolic effects in mice. They fed groups of rats a high-fat diet and tested both semaglutide and tirzepatide. Over just weeks, tirzepatide ramped up fat oxidation, burning more energy even at rest. Meanwhile, semaglutide showed modest fat burning effects and had a noticeable impact on appetite reduction. Of course, we're not mice, but similar effects are mirrored when we look at human trials. Tirzepatide has been shown to help patients not just lose fat, but maintain a higher metabolic baseline than semaglutide achieves. This isn't to say semaglutide isn't a heavyweight itself. For many patients, it's life-altering. I want to share a quick story with you. One of my younger patients, let's call her Grace, came to me completely overwhelmed. She kept seeing headlines that called tirzepatide a miracle drug. But when I broke down what it would mean for her in practical terms, the so-called miracles became logic. Science isn't about magic. It's about understanding how these mechanisms influence you, uniquely you. And that's where this conversation needs to stay. Not in hype or hyperbole, but in fact. Because of all of this potential, what still matters most is who has access to these tools and who does not. Next, let's peel back the layers of clinical trials to see what we've learned so far. Surmount 5 has some eye-opener findings about how these two drugs stack up. I think you'll find the disparities both illuminating and deeply important. Let's dive right into the core data from Surmount 5, the trial that aimed to answer one of the biggest questions in obesity management. Which of these two heavyweight medications, Tirzepatide or Semaglutide, packs the greater punch? The results spoke loud and clear. Adults treated with Tirzepatide experienced a staggering 20.2% average reduction in body weight over just 72 weeks. Now compare that to Semaglutide. The group saw a 13.7% loss, which, while still impressive, stands in sharp contrast. Across the board, Tirzepatide consistently led to more patients hitting every milestone: 10%, 15%, 20%, and even 25% weight loss benchmarks. Nearly half of the Tirzepatide group achieved that 20% goal versus just over a quarter for Semaglutide. And weight isn't the sole measure of success here. Waist circumference dropped by an average of 18.4 centimeters with Tirzepatide, compared to 13 centimeters with Semaglutide. Now, why does this matter, you ask? Because waist circumference is tied directly to visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat that overlies and infiltrates your organs, the offender linked to cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, and metabolic disorders. Now, let's zoom in on some unexpected gender differences. Is Tirzepatide more effective for women? It seems so. In fact, Semaglutide showed similar results. In fact, women lost a whopping 23% of their body weight on Tirzepatide versus 18% for men. Semaglutide showed the same pattern: sharper weight loss for women than for men. There's still much to understand about these disparities, whether biology or dose tolerance plays a bigger role, but what's clear is that these differences matter for personalized treatment planning. Cardiometabolic health improvements weren't left behind either. Both drugs delivered better lipid profiles, lower blood pressure, and improved blood sugar control. But here's the clincher: Tirzepatide outperformed Semaglutide on these fronts too. For anyone with a history of type 2 diabetes or heart failure, these aren't just numbers. These are life-altering changes. Now let me bring in some real-world stakes. NPR interviewed Christina and Jackson, a couple with a story that hits at the crux of this issue. Christina shed about 52 pounds, while Jackson's new 2-digit weight loss freed him from needing his sleep apnea machine. But their journey wasn't powered by fancy brand name pens. No, they used compounded Tirzepatide, a far cheaper alternative. Let's hear Christina and Jackson's real life story.
Time is running out for people who rely on cheaper alternatives for a name brand obesity drug. Large specialty pharmacies that were allowed to essentially make copies of Zepbound have to stop tomorrow. NPR Pharmaceuticals correspondent Cindy Lupkin has more on how patients are dealing with the change.
Christina and Jackson, a couple in Minnesota, used to order a pizza and finish it in one night. But an obesity drug changed that.
We ate some of it the first night, and then the next day we had maybe a little bit more. And then we ended up throwing the pizza away because it had gone past the days that you could eat it. And it was so strange because we have never done that.
No, never.
They've each lost about 20 pounds in 6 weeks. But they're not taking Eli Lilly's Zepbound. Their insurance doesn't cover it. They're taking a cheaper alternative that contains the active ingredient called Tirzepatide. It's made by a compounding pharmacy, which is a special kind of pharmacy that's allowed to essentially make copies of drugs during shortages. Christina says she has more energy for their 4 kids. And Jackson stopped needing to use his sleep apnea machine.
It is completely life-changing to take a bite of these triggering foods and just be like, enjoy it. Say, yep, that was good. Yep. And now I'm full.
And now, yeah.
But on March 19th, the Food and Drug Administration says compounding pharmacies will have to stop making Tirzepatide because the agency declared the year-long Zepbound shortage over. The Agars are worried. Other patients are sad. Some more are just angry. In Arizona, Margot Carmichael was in denial.
I thought what I think a lot of people perhaps did, oh, it'll be fine. These compounding and telehealth places are making millions off of this and helping so many people. There's no way this is going to stop being available.
It's been confusing for patients. Some telehealth companies have been telling them they won't be affected. Others have been offering last-minute sales as the FDA deadline nears.
So March 19th, we are essentially done.
That's Josh Fritzler, the chief financial officer for Olympia Pharmaceuticals, a large compounding pharmacy in Orlando, Florida. Production will stop, but pharmacies can still dispense Olympia's Tirzepatide until it runs out or expires. Olympia has made the medicine for more than 100,000 patients a month.
They're nervous. They're scared. And we're just hopeful that we can make enough in the time being to fill patient scripts.
Smaller compounding pharmacies, which are regulated by states, were supposed to stop in February. Many patients told NPR they have been stocking up on compounded Tirzepatide. Carmichael doesn't have health insurance right now. She says she can only afford a small stockpile.
I don't have the money, so I'm going to borrow the money and try to get 3 more months and stretch it out as long as I can and hope that 6 to 9 months from now, there'll be another solution.
Eli Lilly sells Zepbound vials at a discount for people not using insurance. But Carmichael says they're still too expensive. She would have to pay $600 for a month's supply from Lilly. She's been able to get 3 months of compounded vials for $500. To keep the Lilly discount, patients like Carmichael would also have to renew every 45 days.
They're making it as difficult as possible for people.
Some people are talking online about buying the active ingredient from China and mixing the obesity drugs in their homes. They call it the gray market. Here's Jackson Agar in Minnesota.
Look, when you ban stuff, people are going to turn to crazy alternatives because we need this and we don't have that much money.
But he says the gray market is a risk his family is just unwilling to take. Sydney Lupkin, NPR News.
And here's what I want you to understand. Their early success came with enormous hurdles. Insurance denied their claims for Zepbound, the official branded version. So they turned to a compounding pharmacy, a move that many patients see as their only financial lifeline to access these treatments. Christina told me that she had more energy for her kids than ever before, while Jackson felt years younger. But guess what? Their prescription was suddenly canceled after a regulatory crackdown without warning. So why the sudden crackdown? Let's review the data. After the release of the Surmount 5 trial, which sealed Eli Lilly as a giant in the weight loss industry, the start price for Tirzepatide rose to over $900 per share. In 2019, Eli Lilly's market cap was around $100 billion. Fast forward to now, and the cap is now over $700 billion. Eli Lilly took compounders to court and won. The FDA banned compounders from making copies of Tirzepatide. Stories like theirs remind us that these breakthroughs are not just about innovation. They're about persistent inequities. Who gets these therapies depends so much on geography, economic privilege, and even policy whims. It's a painful reality, folks. Doctors and companies are grappling with these changes to market access. But for now, let these numbers and this story sit with you because they are the foundation for why breaking down barriers to medications matters more than ever. Let's talk about access. Imagine losing weight, feeling healthier than ever, then suddenly being told, sorry, this treatment is no longer available to you. For tens of thousands, this isn't hypothetical, it's reality. The FDA's recent crackdown on compounded versions of Tirzepatide has left patients like Christina and Jackson scrambling to find affordable alternatives. And yet, what was their crime? Needing health care they could actually afford. These compounding pharmacies, specialized facilities mixing affordable treatments, were a lifeline for so many. But as Big Pharma pushed regulators to tighten their grip, these options evaporated overnight. Was it patient safety or business strategy? You tell me. Let's not stop there. Consent and privacy are the new battlegrounds. Many companies behind drugs like Zepbound and Wegovy have found ways to integrate your digital footprints into their business models. Think about it. Your prescriptions, health apps are all a treasure trove of data. And here's the kicker. Did these companies ever really give you full control over how that data is used? Or are they using terms and conditions nobody really reads to chip away at patient autonomy? The deeper issue here, folks, is trust. Trust that health systems prioritize care over profits, that regulators ensure equity, not just compliance, and trust that your personal data won't be weaponized against you to market treatments you can't even afford. This brings me back to something personal. Before I was a cardiologist or a podcast host, I was an activist. I marched for patient rights before I ever wore the white coat, knowing too well what it is like to come from a community where healthcare felt like a luxury and not a right. That fight hasn't ended. If anything, it's more urgent than ever, because no one should have to mortgage their future for the chance to feel better today. This tug of war, patients trapped between regulatory hurdles and corporate interests, is not theoretical. It's happening now. And trust me, systemic changes don't come easy, but it starts with conversations like these, with people like you demanding answers and accountability. So the next time someone calls Tirzepatide or Semaglutide a miracle drug, ask yourself, miracle for whom? For the patients who lose access mid-treatment? For the corporations chasing billion-dollar markets? Or for the regulators caught between science and politics? These drugs are powerful, but so is the silence around who profits and who's left behind. If this episode resonated with you, if it opened your eyes to the layers of truth behind the headlines, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Rate the show, and don't forget to subscribe, because these conversations, they don't stop here. Next week on The Real 411, we're peeling back the curtain on another injustice that deserves a spotlight. Until then, I'm Dr. Chelsea McGee, reminding you that the story is never just a headline. Stay informed, stay compassionate, and as always, stay ready to question the narrative. Take care, listeners, and see you next time.